G'day, we're back. So this is exciting, and hopefully we'll have a bunch of people joining in real quick. I think we did that in under 60 seconds. So we're now live. We got so much to do, and just waiting for a few people to join us. Had to wrap that last one up really, really quickly. Welcome, you're the first viewer. Welcome back on Facebook. And to now, welcome. I'm just waiting for our guests to grab the link out of their email and rejoin us. Any questions, any comments, thoughts? Where would you like us to pick up from the main show in the overtime show? Feel free to jump in and say what you thought, where you're watching from, and that'll be a whole lot of fun. Need a longer format, Dave. Oh, Matt, you're true. You're right. I guess that's why we're doing this overtime show. My thought is that we'll get more views afterwards, in the following days and week, if people see a video that's not a 90-minute video. If it's a 57-minute video, I think they're going to, going to do that. Look, happy to take a straw poll. Would people... even tell me what you think. Do you think we're going to get more viewers of the main show if when they watch it on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, they see a show that's under an hour? Or will they not even start if it's 90 minutes or 100 minutes long? Jump in, leave your comments there. Still waiting for our guests to jump back in. I had to wrap that one up kind of quickly. Because yeah, time got away on me. It surprised me. Welcome back, Dylan. Any further thoughts, Matt? What do you think about my rationale? You said need a longer format. Should we go for 80 minutes, 90 minutes, or will it have an adverse impact on people watching the day after? Yeah, there's some people that like a really long show, but I'd like to reach the most people possible. So what are your thoughts? Matt says the split works well, although many vloggers get many viewers on long formats. Yeah, Elizabeth is laughing. What are you laughing at, Elizabeth? Number of flu deaths annually is tragic as they are. We don't cripple economies in response. You know, Dylan, and you may very well do, but the person who predicted, I think it's the London Institute, a guy who got epidemic predictions about the mad cow disease in England, got them terribly wrong. He got it terribly wrong. He made the predictions about deaths in America and England, and he said there'd be I think 500,000 deaths in England, in the United Kingdom, from COVID, and within a fortnight had revised his statement to say, you know what, he'd said, yeah, you know what, we think it's only going to be 20,000, and so 20,000 down from 500,000, big difference in the predictions, and 20,000 is only a little bit more than the 5-year average of flu deaths. To your point, so yeah. Now let me. It seems like the link isn't working. No, this should be okay. Let me. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping here, guys. John Karuska. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that terribly wrong. Copy to Billboard. I've just got to send these people the link again. So just send that to, sending it to everyone. Look, tell me, what do you think about the format? What can we do better? Should we keep it under an hour, or should we let it go over? Elizabeth's eating. So Katie says, I think with such a terrific panel, it should be allowed to go overtime for questions, but state that at the beginning. Okay. He says, Philip says, I like here separate Pellowe talk and overtime. Well, I'm a little bit fond of it because it's my idea, but I'd definitely like to see a longer format. Suggest cutting the videos into smaller 5 to 10 minute marketable clips that generate interest for the longer format, similar to Joe Rogan. You know what, Trevor? That's actually a really good idea. Can't say I hadn't thought of it, but it does have appeal as you say it right there. I guess the thoughts that I had was to chop it into re-emailed. I'm just getting messages on the social media from the guy saying the link to get back into the show is not working. So sorry about that. It's one downside of this. You know, Trevor, it makes if we get rid of this this jump in the middle, we certainly wouldn't have to worry about the guests finding the right link to get back in. But yeah. Okay, don't understand why there needs to be a break in the stream. Just let anyone that wants to leave, and just keep talking. I wish I knew your name, Port Film Co-op. I don't want to call you Port. It seems awfully ruddy. But here's Evelyn. We'll see what the others are saying now. Did that first link not work, Evelyn, and the second one did? Maybe I sent you the wrong one. Damien's back now too.
G'day.
Did the first link, did the link not work for you until I sent you the new one, Damien?
Yeah, the two links were the same address.
Oh dear. Okay, that's my bad mistake.
All good.
So yeah, we're just having a debate about whether or not this is a good idea, doing the overtime, or whether we should just go for 90 minutes. I'm afraid I'm going to lose a bunch of people on the day after and the day after that who just see a 90-minute video and go, run for the hills.
That's true. I'm sure there's some science there.
Yeah,
which I'm sure you're referring to, which is why you want to split it. But
look, no, sure. It's more anecdotal. There's a lot of people who go, I would never watch a long video, and then the reality is that long videos do get a lot of views.
That's true. Podcasts are generally long too, so not sure.
You could always do it live.
This is true.
Then edit it.
Yeah. I'll just send Augusto a message. What were we talking about, Damien? Yeah.
Sanctity of life.
That's right. Do you think the attitude Queensland government is currently taking with avoiding preventable deaths is consistent with recent legislation passed in the dealings with human life issues?
It's interesting, isn't it? Certainly, Queensland would like to think it's a progressive government, and certainly passed abortion laws during this term, and have championed a lot of progressive causes. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really go together, does it? What we're seeing now with some of these, the vice-like grip they're keeping on the reins with letting people go back to work and releasing the shackles. I just don't. It's a tough one. I'm all for opening up and letting it go, but it's. I know it's a difficult one for a lot of people. I've certainly know people who have relatives in the very difficult categories where any risk to their health is bad. So, look, it's going to be difficult for anyone, and that's why we elect people to make those decisions for us.
Yep. Mark Adams says, with regards to, is the show too long? Should we chop it into topics like the Australian Christian Lobby does? And yeah, that's echoing the sentiment from, who was it up here? I can't remember. It must have been a while back up there. But yeah, that's a good idea. And yeah, maybe we should head that way.
Is that easy enough to do?
It is easy to do. It's just time consuming. And I don't have any staff. We need more Pellowe Talk partners. Shameless plug there for everybody. Marjana says, we see absurdity in this. Abortion is okay, but people suffering of flu isn't. Look, it's it is ridiculous. And Sanctity of Life Sunday is all about basically not activism as much as just a cultural statement and saying human life is sacred. Let's just start with that fundamental value, and if we can agree that human life is sacred, we need to take that as one of our guiding lights for the policies that we decide upon. So yes, we agree human life is sacred. We need to avoid preventable deaths. And what we were talking about with Bill just beforehand is at what cost should the government invest money? What freedoms should we be willing to surrender to get rid of preventable deaths? Getting rid of preventable deaths is a fantastic idea. So to test that theory, how committed are we to government restrictions on natural freedom for the sake of the value of avoiding preventable deaths? Would we like to reduce the significant death toll on our national roads by reducing the national speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour? Nobody can do 20 kilometers on a freeway. Nobody can do more than 20 on the freeways or the highways, where people get killed frequently by people doing. I mean, wouldn't we radically reduce the death toll if we reduced our speed limit to 20 k's an hour? But how many people would think that's a reasonable measure to avoid losing those preventable deaths?
That's a great example. That, and I'm sure the people advocating for keeping lockdown locked up don't really, line that argument up against those other measures that you talk about. Because do we reduce the national speed limit to watch all the deaths plummet? And would we champion that at the expense of the economy? It's really quite a similar argument.
Yeah. Welcome back, Augusto. Sorry I sent you the wrong link. My apologies to everybody. I sent the same link to the both shows. So Marjane is saying organ harvesting is okay in China. No, of course not. I don't know anybody that's saying that is, other than maybe the Chinese government, and they probably don't even admit it. I guess I'm trying to guess what you're meaning, Marjane. Sex trafficking, trafficking kids, and organ harvesting. I don't know of anybody that's advocating or campaigning for those things, or it's a kind of a motherhood statement. They're easy to say we oppose. However, for some reason, it should be just as easy to say we oppose abortion, and it's just ridiculous. The fact that there is such a thing as a pro-abortion candidate. I think it should be as rare and obscure as a pro-slavery candidate.
Can I say something here?
Of course, sir.
Thank you. No, it's just about this the law of unintended consequences.
Okay.
I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about the fact that the government should be very cautious about these measures, because Hayek made a good point in his the Constitution of Liberty and Law, Legislation, and Liberty, that sometimes when government takes some measures, there are consequences that are not envisaged, and that can actually be much worse than the measures adopted to fight the consequences of what is perceived to be a threat. So in many ways, what's happening, and I have tried to explain in my articles, is that the government might not have taken enough consideration to the unintended consequences of the measures adopted. Sometimes when you try to kill a disease, you might actually take the wrong dose and end up killing yourself as a result of the medicine that has been applied. So in many ways are taken. So the medicine that has been used by the government will lead to collateral effects. And some of these effects can lead to the increase in other death rates. For instance, the fact that some people losing their jobs might contemplate, and I hope not, but some of them might contemplate taking their lives away. Another thing you have to bear in mind is that in moments of such as these of great economic crisis, the crime rate tends to increase. So there are lots of unintended consequences caused by extraordinary measures that sometimes were not taken in a proper manner. So when I have written the articles in the past, I have just tried to explain that perhaps in order to fight a disease that my colleague has mentioned that might affect 0.5% of the population, we have adopted measures that can cause far more harm to far many people. And that's a major problem that I see with these measures that have been adopted, is that we might end up having a death toll that's even higher as a result of other unintended consequences of the measures that have been adopted. And certainly the best thing that I have to, the best example that I have to give is the example of the death of the rule of law. But we have other deaths that are unintended consequences of this virus. So perhaps we have to be very careful about what we are going to do in regards to this, to not make the measures even worse than the disease that is happening in this country.
Thank you, Augusto. Yeah, it's so true that the cure can sometimes be worse than the disease. Welcome back, Bill. I'm sorry, that was my typo, my poor administration. I'm going to fire that that guy who sent you that email. Put the same link in for both shows. You can find Bill Muellenberg, Evelyn Ray, and Damien Tomlinson on Twitter, and we're going to twist both Augusto and George Christensen's arm to see if we can get them back into the Twitter crowd and try and restore some balance to the force. Yeah, so that's there's some people asking who's who. So thank you to the guests. We have 4 out of 5 commentators here tonight who contribute to a real journal, the caliber of Cauldron Pool, and Damien Tomlinson is employed by mainstream media, commercial corporate kind of media, but we like slumming it. But no, Damien, we're very grateful for it's probably the other way around for somebody of your professional expertise and qualifications who gets paid to do this for a living, donating some family time in an evening to and come and hang out with us. So we appreciate that, and appreciate that there actually are some people right of Stalin in the paid press.
There certainly are. It's not a happy existence being a Murdoch thug, as they call us.
I do like watching you get bashed up on Twitter. You don't mind it at all. You punch back twice as hard sometimes. Actually, Joe Hildebrand is coming on next week, and I invited him on, and I said it may not do his lefty credentials any good at all. Because he gets bashed up pretty bad as well. I called him Australia's Dave Rubin, somebody who likes to think of himself as a progressive leftist, but looks around and doesn't find any of them anywhere near his position on so many issues. So yeah, our first lefty daring to come over, Cato Bailey. I don't know. Do you know Cato? Does everybody in Townsville know each other? Damien used to be up at the Townsville Bulletin, and Cato's up there in North Queensland. He says g'day and a big fan. So yeah, and we have George Sloom joining us as well. Knock-on effects of this economic crisis is beyond what any of us can imagine right now. Agreed. Damien, is there anything we can do? Look, I don't know why this is taking so long to come out of these restrictions. Why do we need 2 weeks' notice to get our freedom back, Damien?
Well, look, I think what we're seeing is it's the slow-moving government that we're used to. You know, they were very quick to act when it was panic stations, and it really was panic stations worldwide. We didn't know how bad this was going to be, and any and all action was encouraged and shunted straight through, and we're all happy about it. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that we've had this virus licked pretty much from the get-go. This long, slow flattening of the curve. You know, we're all strapped in for a year at least of lockdown measures, and it seems like in the blink of an eye, or in the space of pretty much 2 months, we have completely turned the tide, and we're now, you know, in a position where we've gone too far and we need to wind it back just as quickly as we clamped it down. So that's the difficulty, is that all these job keepers and all these wonderful programs that were rushed through have not even yet been enacted, half of them, and we're going to think about repealing most of them. So that's all we're seeing now. It's just that, you know, we went too hard too quickly. Thankfully, it was the right thing to do at the right time. Now we're trying to unravel it, and it's very difficult.
Yep. Bill, what do you think? Is there an explanation for the glacial speed at which the government is deigning to let us go back to church?
Well, it's, as you heard, partly that's what bureaucrats do. They move that speed, but look, the real problem here is, of course, you know, we're not quite the honor and shame culture of, say, the Middle East, but we have the same thing. Politicians don't want to lose face. Many of them have blown it, and they've, relied on experts who've blown it big time. You know, these massive predictions about hundreds of thousands of deaths. I actually had one guy, an academic, on the social media tell me, presumably with a straight face, that this crisis will probably cost 1 million lives. Corona would take 1 million lives. Today we've had our 100th. Wow. She's 93, Alzheimer's aged care woman. As Poor well, lady. Most of our deaths have been the elderly, so we've known pretty early on this was the case. So instead of doing targeted lockdown, specifically dealing with the really at-risk people, we decided to lock down the whole nation. So now we got all these politicians and experts who've got egg on their face. They don't really want to apologize. In fact, I haven't heard a word of apology thus far. So in a way, by dragging this out, they can kind of say, well, look at all the lives we saved. We did this. And I said over 2 months ago that when this all finishes, we'll probably have under 10,000 cases and around 100 deaths. And so far, that's spot on. So the question is, was it because of these draconian policies, or was it never that bad to begin with?
Yeah, no, those are very good questions. And I heard Peter Hitchens, the journalist, say, claiming that these restrictions have avoided the cataclysmic predictions that were offered at the beginning is a bit like walking into a hospital with chickenpox and walking out with one less leg, and the doctor expecting you to thank him for saving you from chickenpox. It's just not necessarily true. So I don't know what the numbers were. Clearly, Sweden hasn't had as good a result as the rest of their neighbours with comparable situations. But have they had anywhere near the predicted catastrophe? It's a rhetorical question. I don't think so. So don't take too long on this one, Augusto, but one of the questions I'll see if I can find it so I can show it. But one of the questions specifically for you, we'll indulge, was what do you think about setting up common law courts? What are your thoughts on establishing common law courts? From Luke Bailey.
I don't know exactly what it means, because as a matter of fact, well, we have a legal system which is called the common law. But in many ways, it's true to say that the standards of justice that the courts provided have been undermined as a result of recent changes in the legislation. For instance, the inversion of the onus of the proof is a good example. And also the proven of guilt has been undermined in many ways. And you have, as a result, as I have mentioned, miscarriages of justice occurring with more frequency now. And you have, just give an idea and an example, the Pellowe case recently, where the High Court, as an unanimous decision, has testified to the fact that the Victorian Court of Justice committed an act of injustice by condemning a person and keeping this person almost 1 year in jail when he was ultimately found to be not guilty. Look, because he had enough money and power to appeal to the High Court, he managed to be able to be free. But there are so many people in this country who don't have the money to fight for justice and for justice to be ultimately provided. As a result, if you don't have money in this country, you are screwed if something happens of something of this nature, especially with the onus of the proof sometimes inverted. So what I can tell you is that if you really believe that the country still has the rule of law, you are entirely wrong, because some people have had a terrible experience of being victims of this miscarriage of justice in this country.
It's very true. What I guess we need to, one of the questions I wanted to ask from the previous hour, and I'm liking the idea from the viewers, listening to the feedback that we're getting tonight about this question of should we split the show into an hour, nice and tidy, and overtime. And I think I like the idea of essentially chopping it up after the fact, especially for Facebook into smaller things. But one of the topics I wanted to talk about was, we've gone to so much effort to avoid preventable loss of life. And that sounds like a statement nobody can disagree with. But then we ask the next question, at what cost? And some sensible questions asked to find out, well, there is actually a limit where you won't go to any effort to save or avoid preventable loss of lives. One of the laws we're seeing liberalised, normally illegal, but liberalised in many jurisdictions around Australia, is euthanasia, the legal right for a doctor to kill you or to help you kill yourself in a way that really doesn't backfire and cause a whole heap of suffering, which it frequently does. Now, there's two conflicts here. One is the current COVID thing, and the second is all the money we invest in trying to encourage people not to commit suicide, to reduce the numbers of suicide. We nationally consider this to be a terrible, terrible thing, to have a high suicide rate. Bill mentioned, was it 40,000 people in America during the Great Depression who committed suicide? Why would we care if people's right to kill themselves is something that we want to champion on one hand and reduce on the other? It just doesn't make sense. This Sunday is Sanctity of Life Sunday, and the whole point of that is to essentially agree with God and say life's not just valuable, but from God's perspective, it's sacred. And that's a unique statement in all of creation. Evelyn, what is it?
Can I say something?
I actually just want to hear from Evelyn a bit.
All
we'll
right.
come back. We'll come back to you,
I have
Augusto.
something to say about
Ladies
this.
first.
Sure, yeah, ladies first. You
Ladies
fight
first
for it, Evelyn.
always.
Augusto is a gentleman. He won't protest that. But Evelyn, what's the deal here? How can we have this? How long can we have this dichotomy, this contradiction of values in the same society?
I think as long as people are sinful, I think it's part of our sinful nature to be drawn to things that are just completely pure evil. I mean, no matter how much you dress it up, suicide is suicide. And I think people use language to try to desensitize. They've turned it from suicide to euthanasia, you know, just to try to take the edge off it. But ultimately, I mean, I don't know if you've seen in Victoria, they have these pods to assist people with euthanasia. And essentially it's just
Wasn't that an episode of Futurama?
Yeah. Well, a bit like that, yeah. But it's if you look at, you could Google it. They look terrible. It's awful. It looks like a glass coffin that you lay in and it cuts off oxygen, and that's apparently a humane way for people to go. But as I said, it's just a very expensive plastic bag. Ultimately, that, if I can be blunt, and I think I don't understand how, you know, on one hand you've got, it's almost celebrated that people get to make that choice for themselves. But then in other circumstances, especially if juveniles are involved, or...
Is that it?
Yeah,
like
that's
concept.
it. I actually wrote an article on that a couple of years ago, and I had a good look into it. There's, all different gases that get put into there, and it's just, after it's all finished, you just pick up the glass thing and you can put it straight in the ground, and it's awful. But they're a real thing, and I just find the whole notion of it appalling, you know.
Yeah. Bill, you've written quite a lot on suicide, on euthanasia. I'm sorry, wrong word, but boil it down for us. We don't have a lot of time left, but what's the nutshell? What are the takeaways? If you were talking to if somebody watching tonight wanted to, you know, give a simple, memorable argument to a politician that they're lobbying and saying, please don't vote for this, which is coming up in Queensland. Surely they're going to rush this through before the election 5 months away. What memorable thing could you advise a voter to raise with their politician to maybe help change their mind? There's so much to say, of course, but
yeah. Well, look, again, our corona discussion is your case in point. Everybody's going crazy to save one life, and will go to extreme measures to do it. And yet on the other end, we're saying, life isn't worth all that much. It used to be, to preserve suffering, prevent great suffering. But of course, now that slippery slope is well and truly gone. And it's really the abortion euthanasia debate, like the bioethics debate, are all about personal autonomy. You have the right to do with your life whatever you want. We've forgotten about the social good. We've forgotten about principles of do no harm. But funnily enough, they creep in during times like Corona. And then all of a sudden we're worried about saving life, but then we forget about it the rest of the year. So, look, simply pointing out the discrepancies and, the double standards that we have might be a good way to go.
Yeah. Augusto, what did you want to add?
No, look, I have to make a point here that I think it's quite necessary, is the fact that sometimes one of the leading causes of desperation is actually the behavior or the acts of parliament in this country. For instance, the fact that we have some laws here that actually incentivize parental alienation. And now with the coronavirus, I have, unfortunately, because I have written many articles on the subject, been bombarded by parents who are unable to see their children because the custodial parent claims that as a result of the coronavirus, it would be unsafe for this child to have contact with the non-custodial parent. So if you face a situation where you have basically lost your job, where as a result of the measures taken by the government, you basically are jobless and penniless and sometimes even homeless, and then you get a divorce as a result of separation, and you are now not even seeing your children as a result of ill-conceived laws that have been passed in parliament by politicians who are not very wise in this country. I think this is one of the leading causes of suicide. I know many people who have committed suicide because they have lost everything, including access to their kids. So I think the government should be careful about not leading people to a position or a situation of utter desperation. And that can happen to anybody. I'm not taking the position that can happen to men only, because I know many women who are now alienated from their children as a result of very bad laws that have been introduced in this country by politicians who are not very wise or don't have enough concern for the well-being of this society.
We have a bunch of people saying very well said, Augusto Zimmermann. Thanks for such honest and diligent communication. Spoken to many of these parents in the past week, daily work. I did an interview with a panel, hosted a panel discussion at Sheridan College, where Augusto is a professor in Perth, and Bill was there at the same time, nearly a year ago, before Western Australia passed their euthanasia legislation. And one of the things that I took away from that was, I guess, the summary of two things. One, there's never ever been a jurisdiction in the history of the world which has legalized euthanasia and not had unintended casualties, which were not protected by the legislation. It's just people, and in every single one of those, the legislators said, we'll get it right this time. We'll prevent, our laws will be great, and they won't be open to abuse. The second thing is that, and Dylan raises this point here, is that of people who are dying in hospitals, roughly 3% will be experiencing an unacceptable level of suffering. But of that 3%, we can almost eliminate that. Maybe we're not quite at the point yet to completely eliminate suffering, but with proper investment in palliative care provision, proper funding of palliative care, and proper training in palliative care, which is grossly inadequate in all states, we can really, really, really erode the level of suffering. And euthanasia advocates are not really campaigning for murder; they're campaigning for an end to suffering. And to me, I mean, they are effectively campaigning for murder, but I don't think that's their motivation. I think their motivation, and people who want it for themselves, they're wanting to avoid suffering and end suffering. And so I think it's just unconscionable to say, hey, let's try letting people kill themselves before we've even tried properly funding palliative care. It's
interesting. I was just going to say, sorry, in any other situation, if somebody wasn't at mental soundness or they were suffering from depression and they had a mental disorder, you would never allow them to make any such decision. You would take those rights from them. And the number one leading cause for suicide is depression. So they're not mentally sound, yet people are giving them these choices to make. I find that very contradictory.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Look, I do have to thank the panel for joining us tonight. Let's promote where they are. So we have Bill Muellenberg, billmuellenberg.com, and you can follow him on Twitter. I don't think you're an actual Twitter debater, Bill, but your posts automatically go up there. So at least you're there. Augusto, we'll have to upgrade you to that presence level at least. Bill is one of those elitists who doesn't follow absolutely anybody on Twitter, but has quite a few followers following him without putting any effort into it.
I've got 75,000 comments on my website, so that keeps me busy.
His website is where all the action is, and you can find that link on his Twitter profile, billmuellenberg.com. 70,000 comments on over 5,000 articles. There is a lot of action going on from Bill Muellenberg, one of Australia's leading cultural commentators. And coming a distant second is Evelyn Ray, author for Cauldron Pool. Not quite 5,000 articles yet, Eve, but thank you for joining us tonight. And you can follow Eve on Twitter at _ Evelyn Ray, R-A-E. And we also have Damien Tomlinson. I've just lost your, I think I must have flicked off there. Here we go. DamTom79, which makes me just a little bit older than you, just a tiny bit. But while you have no hair, I have grey hair, which definitely makes me wiser, unqualified. Mind you, I can't grow such a glorious beard and bear to wear it for very long at all. And that's right. It's an inverted reality. And we also have Augusto Zimmerman. A lot of his posts are on Facebook. He's shared tonight's live stream. And a lot of his posts on Facebook are public, so you'll be able to see that writing there. And he's editor-in-chief of the West Australian Legal Theory Association, among other roles that you'll be able to check that out there. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. The one other thing I do need to share with you is where's it gone? Trying to juggle technologies here. There we go. Is the ad for next week. Next week we've got John Anderson, Mark Latham, Corinne Barraclough, Joe Hildebrand, and I'll be here as well as always. So we haven't got topics decided for that, but love to hear what you think. Stay tuned to those folks, their guests, their posts, their articles, and we'll plan a really great episode for next week. And maybe we will try going all the way through and breaking up the overtime later. Seeing that seems to be what most of you are saying. Garth has put up your link for us, billmuellenberg.com. Cool. All right, well, that's it for this night. Let's give the panel one last chance to wrap up a final thought for the evening on any topic at all for 30 seconds. Ladies first. Evelyn, what do you think? Final thoughts for this 90 minutes.
I think that we just need to be aware of laws and what our rights are. And I think I'm actually going to follow up my Public Health Act article and see if there are any other constitutional laws that people might have rights to. I think that's probably important to know.
Okay. And Damien, your final thoughts for the evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, my only comment on that Public Health Act stuff, as outrageous as it is that maybe we should send it to the NRL and sort out those players who are refusing to get the flu jab before play resumes.
Forcibly strip and jab them, hey?
Absolutely.
Ship them to Western Australia to get it done.
Yeah.
Augusto, your final thoughts for the evening?
Well, first they went after your free speech and you did nothing about it. Now they are going after all your freedoms and perhaps it's too late. Yeah. So what I have to say is that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And we need desperately to recover our tradition of fundamental rights and freedoms being respected.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And Bill, what are your final thoughts for the evening?
Yeah, well done to your three guests. They're all champions. Well done. Keep going. And thank you, Dave. You're leading the way here. It's a great show you've got, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir. And any thoughts on what we talked about tonight?
Look, we've done a good rounds here tonight, and it's a great vehicle that you've got to make this stuff available that the mainstream media doesn't tend to run with.
Indeed. Maybe Damien can fix that up for us. Bill, what do you have coming up in your planned articles for tomorrow?
Well, as I say, I've got 60 on Corona, so I'm trying to branch out a bit. Mind you, I've already written a few on theology in the last few days to go in a bit of a different direction, so I may continue in that line for a while.
Hey, maybe if you'll take a request, you should do a summary of the best, a parade of the top 10 Sanctity of Life articles you've done. Just an excerpt from each of the top 10 articles, a reprise in celebration of Sanctity of Life Sunday, this Sunday.
Yeah,
you taking requests?
Good.
Yeah.
Well, mind you, I've got several hundred articles on abortion, so that could keep me busy for a while. But
you just have to choose your favorite 10.
I know, that's hard.
Well, that's the note we're going to end on tonight. It'd be a huge favor to the nation if you would head to sanctityoflifesunday.com.au. Now, on that page on that website is a resources page, or you can even go straight there, sanctityoflifesunday.com.au/resources. Go there, and right at the top of the page is a 90-second video. It's beautiful. It's positive. It's affirming. It's non-activist. It's non-partisan. It's just a really, really great affirmation of the sanctity of human life. Wouldn't it be great if that video was downloaded? It's free and available to do so. And every single church included it in their service this Sunday to celebrate what God says about life. That's why it was made. Send it to your pastor, send it to your priest, and invite them to include that in their online or in-person service if they're having it for 10 people on Sunday. But also, why don't you download it and upload it to your Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, as an original post for you to celebrate Sanctity of Life this Sunday. It's a video that's been made just for this Sunday. So download it and share it. But there's a whole heap of other information about that day and other resources and inspiration for you as well. But that video is at sanctityoflifesunday.com.au/resources. But that's it for this evening. And again, thank you very much to the panel. And we will see you all in the comments section. Bye.